We left off on the last tape. We're talking about various Jewish holidays and how they were celebrated. I asked you about Purim. Any other holidays that come to mind that you celebrated you'd like to share with us?
Well, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Yes. At that time I was too young to fast, but yes, that was a very special holiday. I think that non-Jews over there in the city were quite respectful of the Jews, all dressed up and going to shul and so forth. Yes, I think it was making an impression on them.
Did your family experience any discrimination at all where they lived, in Colmar or in Strasbourg?
Basically as foreigners, first of all, to become a French citizen by naturalization is difficult as can be.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
It's very difficult to become a French citizen by naturalization. And as long as you're a foreigner, you could not be employed. Unless it was a very menial type of job. You could not go into politics. That was against the law. I mean, there was certainly some restrictions in general against all foreigners, not only just against Jews.
So when your parents moved to Alsace-Lorraine, was your father able to work right away?
As he opened up his own place with the partner, Mr. Ernst, I mentioned before.
And who was Ernst?
Ernst was his partner, and then later on we met him during the war, and we go into that later on. I forgot to mention to you again that from Frankfurt in 1923, my father went to Israel. There was a bank Wolf or similar name in Frankfurt that sent him over there to found the kibbutz. I guess this must have been some sort of investment at the time. And the kibbutz was named Machne Israel. Now, how you spell it? M-A-H-A-N-E, Yisrael, Y-I-S-R-A-E-L, or Machne, M-A-C-H, Mahane. Anyway, my father told me always about it, and finally one day I found it, years later.
So he went to Palestine, but then he came back?
He came back, yes. Apparently it was not possible to develop the type of industry over there. Besides, there was always some fighting going on with the local Arabs. So
prior to the occupation, how would you say the Jewish people were treated in Colmar?
Well, the Alsatians had a high percentage of anti-Semites. I would say that, and not only when you combine this being anti-Semitic, when you are a Jew and a foreigner besides, then you really have a package to carry.
Did you know about Hitler personally and his rise to power in Germany?
Well, I was very much interested in all international news. As a matter of fact, you know, when he came to power, I realized there was going to be some problems. And I was quite young. In 1933, I was about 8 years old. I followed, for instance, also the Abyssinian War, when Italy attacked Abyssinia. I followed the revolution in Spain. I mean, I was very much interested in those things. A lot of people were not.
But what did you personally know about Hitler?
Besides the fact that he was a house painter, that he was an anti-Semite, that he had been in the German army in France at one time, and that the SR and the SS meant no good to the Jews. Especially at that time they had more SR than SS, I believe, because the SS were the Schutzstaffel, his personal guard. And when he actually had some of the own SS killed, like Römer, or whatever his name was, then I figured, hey, he doesn't care about anybody, even his friends, you know.
Were there any changes that you observed as Hitler rose to power in Germany in 1933? Did you observe any changes in where you lived in Colmar prior to the occupation? Did anything change in any way for you and your family?
For us directly, not in Colmar, but in Frankfurt, I realized what was going on there. Because the Jews were restricted in their occupations and so forth. for instance, my grandfather had a 5-story home over there. And because he could not work, or he was self-employed at that time, and the family could not work the children, he defaulted, he fell back on taxes. And the Nazis confiscated the house. The city of Frankfurt confiscated the house, I guess in 35, 36 or 37 or so, when the Jews could no longer work. And apparently we were unfortunate enough not to have someone file a claim on time. Otherwise we could have recovered it. My uncle was in charge after my grandfather was run down by a Nazi, and I guess he just couldn't do anything at all. What happened at the time is they claimed that if he had claimed the inheritance, then they could have sold the house for whatever they could, and he would have had to make up a deficiency. So there was no point in him even claiming the property.
So prior to the occupation, do you feel that your life changed much at all?
No, it was just about the same. Although we started to see some Alsatians that exhibited some Nazi-type tendencies. And I can probably give you one example later on, or now.
Yes.
Well, when the war started, my father was 49 years old and a foreigner, so he had volunteered for civil defense in Colmar. They made him commander of a civil defense post. And before the Germans came into Colmar, the same evening, or a few days before that, the people were asking, should we salute with the hand up, Heil Hitler, or should we salute this way? That's the attitude of the population there. You know, seeing the side of the victor.
What do you recall about the day your town was occupied?
Well, I do not recall the town being occupied. What happened is this here. First inkling we had of any problems was when the Germans fired across the line to the Maginot Line, which was about 19 kilometers, I would say about 15 miles from Colmar.
What year was this now?
1940. This was on the 15th of June, 1940. And Germany was already occupying the northern part of France. So what happened is that my father received an order to, what they call order de repli, go back to southern France from the civil defense. And he was told, be at the train at 10 o'clock in the morning. He got there, we got there, all of us, and the train had left at 7 o'clock in the morning. There was no more train. So we had a bicycle and a few things on it. My father says, we are walking out. I had what I call a friend of mine at one time that saw us walk with a bicycle and stuff, and he started to, grin. You know, he was found out he was Nazi afterwards. His uncle was involved with the Nazi party there. So we went and walked probably about 10 kilometers on the highway going south, and then a military truck that was going south picked us up. They drove us for about a day or two until we hit a railroad station that was accessible, but there were trains still going. We took the train, and it was loaded with people. Food was actually almost unavailable. We were able to get some bread. When we stopped at the station, sometimes they had what they called a buffet, where they would sell you bread. Water, the farmer started to sell you water at so much a glass. And one thing was amusing one time. We stopped doing machine gunning and whatnot. We came across a train that was next to ours, was stopped, had been machine gunned. And it had a big wine tank on it with full of holes. And there was a guy on the floor on the bottom just waiting for the wine to go out in his mouth. I thought it was funny. We had such dire circumstances and we had to laugh.
So in other words, you left Colmar. Your father was told to leave, or he felt he should
Well,
leave?
they realized that things were bad, so he went to see his supervisor, and the supervisor says, you go to Bordeaux. He gave him an order, the mission, to go to Bordeaux. Well, we never made it down there so fast. It took us about 9 days to go across. In between, we stopped in the station, and they said, everybody out of the train. The Germans are coming to machine gun. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. But they forced everybody off the train, out of the station. We met somebody from Frankfurt that my parents knew. They used to have a movie theater in Frankfurt. I do not recall their name. Anyway, we could not stay out there. We had to go further south. My father says, we are going to bluff our way in. And he told the people that were from Frankfurt, you two come with us. Just follow me and don't say anything at all. He had his ordre de mission, which means that they have to let him go on. He went by a soldier that was over there on guard duty. So the order walked right through. We all followed. Didn't ask any questions. Got back on the train. My father was really something else.
So, I mean, did you have any kind of papers with you at all, or documents at this point?
Well, we had our foreign citizenship papers, yes. Carte d'identité as foreigners.
You had
but,
what? I'm sorry.
We had our identification cards as foreigners. But this ordre de mission had the precedence over everything else. It meant you have to go, we have orders to go to Bordeaux. And they could have questioned it, because it was civil defense, not the army. But they didn't.
And your mother and your sister and brother were with you? You were all
We
together?
were all together, yes.
So where did you finally end up on this train
We finally
ride?
went up in Bordeaux, and sure enough, the Germans or the Italians had bombed it the day before. We found someone that located us an apartment. We were barely there, and then we heard that the armistice had been signed. This was about the 21st, 22nd of June, 1940. And part of the armistice agreement was that Germany would occupy the whole west coast of France along the sea, and that included Bordeaux also. My father says, we're not going to be here. What happened that during the Kristallnacht in 1938, brother of my mother had been killed. He was hidden in a cellar, and his youngest son brought him food from time to time. A neighbor spied on the boy, found out where my uncle was hiding, and called the police. They arrested my uncle. While they were down in the cellar, he made believe that he was chopping wood with an axe. Well, they took him to the police station. They put down that he had threatened them with an axe, and that he died of a heart attack. And my cousin had opened up the casket and found out that his father had been beaten across the face with a whip and had been shot through the heart. So it was time for us to realize that there'd be no security with us, for us in German occupation. In addition to this, another uncle, brother of my mother, had been arrested in Leipzig, and we had no information where he was. So we decided to take the train in Bordeaux to go to Toulouse.
Bordeaux is in what section? South
It's
France?
on the
or-
coastline of, on the west coast of France, not too far from the Spanish border.
So you-
Toulouse, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. So then you decided to go to Toulouse?
Toulouse, which was not on the map that they had issued in the papers, you know. So we went to Toulouse, we found an apartment, and at that time they were feeding the refugees. They had, what do you call it, soup kitchens and whatnot, you know. There were thousands of people there. The Jewish organizations tried to help as much as possible, but were swamped, you know. And we did get, the landlord had found a place where they had mattresses for sale, second-hand. So we grabbed those. So at least we did not have to sleep on the floor with the furniture. Then in October sometimes, the Vichy government issued an order that all people who came to France since 1936 had to be put in a concentration camp, all foreigners. And the reason for that was, in 1936, they had the refugees from Spain, from the revolution in Spain. So France had built a whole bunch of camps in France, the Vernet, Rivesaltes, Agde, Gurs, all kinds of camps. And the préfet, the governor of Toulouse, was only too happy to get rid of the Jews. He was an anti-Semitic character. Anyway, he arrested even those who were not, did not come to France after 36, even the ones before, like us, we came there at 26. So they put us in the camp in the morning, 7 o'clock or so. We stayed out the whole day, no food. At night, they put us on a train and they sent us to Montpellier. Agde, actually, it's a small camp on the Mediterranean.
Okay, this is a camp in Montpellier?
It was actually outside Montpellier in
And
Agde.
what was the name of the camp?
Agde, A-G-D-E.
A-G-D-E. And what were the conditions like in this camp?
Well, first of all, you slept on boards. There was a barrack, there were all kinds of barracks out there, two levels, and nothing there. If you had a blanket, you were lucky.
Men, women, and children, or just?
No, the women and children were in a different camp. There were 3 camps over there. One for the men, one for the women and children, and the third one was for the troops, like Czech army, refugees, the Annamites, which are from Vietnam, and all kinds of foreign troops that were in France and were not allowed to go to Africa to continue the fight.
So what happened to your mother and sister at this point?
They were in the other camp.
What was the name of that camp?
Well, it's the same camp, a different camp number 1, camp number 2, camp number 3.
So you were with your father and brother?
Yes.
And was this camp surrounded with barbed wire?
Oh yes, oh yes. And it was quite a distance away from the village. And the kitchen served bread for 6 people for a day. People were actually so hungry they were fighting us to make sure that nobody gets a bigger piece than the other one. That was terrible. Soup was just watered down. There was hardly anything in there. Sometimes a potato or 2, and once a day we had maybe a sliver of meat in there.
Do you know who the who were the leaders of the camp? Who were the commanders?
Captain Tassard.
He was French?
He was a gendarme. This was all French police there, gendarme.
And can you describe him? What was he like?
He was actually a nice person. The point is he had orders, and orders are orders. So what happened is, a friend of my sister was working in his office as secretary, and he was looking for a second secretary. So my sister's friend said, "Erna, how about working over there?" She says, "Okay." Well, that was a good thing. My father, we had visiting rights, I guess, for once a week or so. And my father says to my sister, "You know what, ask him for a laissez-passer to go to Montpellier, to the prefecture." And Captain Tassard said, "Fine." Well, my mother, my brother were still in there, so I could not risk very much, if my father and my sister left.
I'm not sure if I'm following you. Go back a minute to tell me the story. The officer needed a secretary.
Yes.
Okay.
Secretary. There was one there already.
Okay. So then what happened after that?
So my father said to my sister, "Why don't you ask him for a laissez-passer, which is like an order to go. You have laissez-passer, let go through is what it translates to Montpellier, so he could see the governor." My father was not afraid of anything, And so Captain Tassard said, "Yes, fine." He gave him a day's pass, and they went to Montpellier. And when they went to governor's office, my father, in the hallway, meets this Ernst I mentioned before.
Ernst was a business associate?
Yes, exactly. And he was Secretary General of the Prefecture. He was second in charge over there.
Of the...
Prefecture.
What is that?
Like the governor's office. And he asked my father, "What are you doing over here?" My father says, "Well, I'm in the camp in Agde. He says, you what? He says, yes, they arrested me in Toulouse, the whole family. He says, here you are, you're free. Do you know any more people who have been arrested that came to France before 36, when he had to go by the orders also? My father remembered offhand, including us, about 36 names. So he issued an order for all 36 to be released immediately. My father came back the same evening, and I asked him what happened. He says, I can't say anything right now, but we are free. He did not want to cause panic, people, you know, and so on. In the morning, we all were released, and Ernst had told him, I would like for you to stay in the camp and get other people out. Well, he had also, in the process, we had received a pass to go in and out of the camp, and I have a copy here, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. And we had been in such bad circumstances over there, without food to speak of. We were pleased to help the people out that could be helped. So if they had any money, we bought stuff for them in the village. It was very cold in the winter time. My hands were frozen, my brothers frozen too, but it was such a satisfaction to be able to help those people.
What were the conditions like inside this camp?
Very bad. For one thing, each camp, I'm sure, received a certain allotment of money that did not go to the people where it was supposed to go, for one thing. There was one inmate who was so cold that he took a piece of furniture, a table or something like that, he broke it up and started a fire to warm himself up. They put him in jail over there. I mean, you know, there was one time a journalist came, I believe it was an American journalist, that would not let him approach just to the barbed wires, and we were trying to put up signs, we are hungry, you know, the kids, and the police chased us away. That was before we were liberated.
So it was the French police that guarded the camp.
Yeah, it was a French zone, it was a Vichy zone.
And what happened to somebody if they didn't obey orders there?
They could put me in jail. They had a jail there.
Did anything happen to you while you were there?
No, no. We weren't there that long, actually.
How many people would you say were in this camp?
Oh, God, a few thousands. I don't recall offhand, but there was the three camps between the men, the Spaniards, also the Spanish people had their own barracks. They had gypsies had their own barracks, and then they had the military in their own camp, and the women and children in another one.
So there were gypsies, did you say?
Yes, the Germans had, the French had arrested them also.
So besides gypsies,
Spaniards.
Spaniards,
And all the other foreigners.
not just Jews. Were
No, no.
What other people besides?
I had some Russian foreigners, you know, and I didn't see many from Belgium or so. If they were not Jewish, they were not in the camp. I didn't see any.
How long were you in this camp?
Oh, probably a week or so.
Well,
Well,
what
lucky.
did they make you do there every day? Was there a daily routine?
No, just you had to take a line, go to wash yourself. There was a big line there. You had, okay, sometimes they asked for volunteers to work in the kitchen. And if you were lucky, they would take you. Then you could get a little extra, you know, like a potato or so in the soup or so. I mean, you know, it's just terrible conditions.
What kind of food did you have there?
You might say boiled water with some potatoes in it sometimes, a little bit of fat, very little, sometimes a piece of meat, nothing, and bread.
Were you in barracks?
Yes,
How many people were in a barracks, approximately?
I would say probably 100 or more.
Was there a supervisor in your barracks?
Yes, they had what they call the Älteste, a German expression for the oldest one,
Who was that person? Was it a Jew?
a Jewish guy. Because in our barrack we were all Jews.
Do you remember anything all about this person?
He was not trying to mistreat anybody. I mean, you know, he was just responsible to the administration, that the people had a curfew, that nothing undue happened in the camp, that they wouldn't break any furniture or whatnot, you know, things like that.
So you were never allowed to leave the camp. You had to stay inside
That's
the
right,
camp?
until we were freed.
And your father was able to leave the camp to talk to this. How was your father able to? I still don't understand how your father was able to get you freed.
Because he got first the authorization to see the governor,
Who gave him that authorization?
the captain from the camp. My sister was the secretary, remember?
Now I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so he was allowed out of the camp, your
Yes.
father, and he got
For one
this
day.
authorization, and he got the authorization mainly because he ran into his business
No,
partner.
no. He got the authorization to see the governor. And accidentally, when he got to the governor's office, in the hallway, he met this friend.
And it was because he met this friend, though, that he was freed.
That's correct.
So he came back to the camp and was able to. Was he responsible then for getting other people freed?
The governor, Mr. Ernst said, you stay in the village of Agde. Get yourself a place there and get those people out as much as you can. I think my father started something that showed the humanitarian side of the Ernst. He realized that he had to help people. He was a Christian, a Catholic, and he did not go along with the Vichy government. He was an employee of the government, but he realized, hey, we can't let this happen.
This is Ernst you're talking
Ernst, yes.
What was Ernst's last name?
That was his last name.
Oh, his last name
I
was
forgot
Ernst.
his first name.
So was Ernst able to get this kind of permission for your father from the governor?
No, he
Or
signed it himself.
he
He was
signed
second
it
in command.
Because he was second in command.
That's
Okay.
right. And I have a copy of his release.
So how many people did your father help get released from
Approximately
the camp?
1,500.
Were released on your father's say?
But no, what happened actually, Ernst told him, look, we can release some people, fine, the ones came before 36. We can help other ones also, if they can show they have the means to support themselves for at least 1 year. So if you could show you had X number of francs, you could be released. Now, my father says that's fine. We get those people out. But the ones that have no money should be also able to be released. And maybe they go to Spain or Portugal because it was close to the border. So he says the ones that get released will have to lend money to the ones that cannot go because they have no money, and then they will go outside and return the money. However, somebody in the prefecture that had done the paperwork there checked the money also and realized he took down the numbers, serial numbers of the bills, and realized that some of these were showing up a few times. So he says, no, we will not accept that. Well, then we had to do a different thing. We had to go to banks and exchange the bills, go to grocery stores, exchange the money, so that it will not be the same money at all, you know. And we were able to get 1,500 people out of there. My father got in touch with a Mr. Bernheim from a different village or town there, and he was able to provide clothing for some of the people in the camp also. And we did this ourselves for quite a while, my brother and me bringing food into the camp. Things much in demand was bread and saccharin for the coffee. The coffee was water with very little else in it, but it was at least sweet water with saccharin. No, I mean, this went on until they moved the people from